What is going on, guys? In today's video I will show you the best automatic cannons Rafa build in Borderlands 4. This setup is known as the peacebreaker cannons build. The concept is super simple. You're placing down deployable cannons that also function as stationary turrets, and with the right skill pad they stop being just support tools and turn into relentless laser death machines. What makes the build so satisfying is the combination of the brute force. With most other builds you're constantly waiting on the cooldowns or juggling resources to keep your power going. However, Rafa completely sidesteps that problem, because thanks to skills like the Juerga early on and Inspirado later, your cannons are always available when you need them, and they never really fall off. And the crazy part is that these cannons will scale directly with your gun's damage bonuses. That means every investment you make into your weapons, crit multipliers or the elemental effects, they will all supercharge your turrets. You're doubling, sometimes even tripling your output without the extra effort. The gameplay loop could not be simpler. You just summon cannons, then fire your gun and watch entire groups of enemies evaporate in seconds. But beneath this simplicity is some wild scaling. Once you unlock the beam team capstone, things really go off the rails. Suddenly, your turrets will stop behaving like regular deployables and start acting like non-stop laser beams. They sweep across the battlefield, chaining through the mobs and punching holes in the bosses, and even shooting enemies from different angles that you aren't even aiming at. This build gives you that type of control that feels effortless yet devastating. And remember, if you want to check this build, look up the best items, the skill trees and power of building, then check my link in the description. Also, if you're interested in buying other PC or console games with 50 or 70% discount, then check out Instant Gaming. For example, I want to buy Elden Ring, so we just click on Add to Cart, then click Pay, then input our details and pay. After payment is complete, we will receive activation key, then copy and paste the key in, and it's that simple. So what are you waiting for? Click my link in the description and check out Instant Gaming for yourself. So let's take a look at our skill tree. The big three priorities are uptime, damage and utility. These pillars will keep the build from ever falling behind, and as long as you follow this structure, you always feel like you're progressing. In the early game, you want to grab Sitiara and Instinto. These will give you that early burst of movement speed and super high power spikes right out of the gate. It doesn't seem flashy at first, but that mobility boost will help you to stay ahead of the fights, even reposition faster and dodge a lot of unnecessary damage. Then we immediately dive into the Juerga, and this skill is the real engine behind this build's uptime. Every point here just means your cannons will come back faster and stay up longer. It's the difference between having a nice gimmick skill and having your entire playstyle defined by the relentless turrets. Once your Juerga is online, you slide into the death hands and the pain reaction. These are straight multipliers to your gun damage, and remember, every single buff that you apply to yourself is also mirrored on the cannons, and suddenly both you and your turrets are shredding enemies in sync. This is where the build really transitions from the decent utility to okay, this is getting broken. And then when we come to the beam team, which is the crown jewel of this tree, here you will probably wanna sink few filler points into things like the vitriol, but once you unlock the beam team, the entire playstyle will transform. Your cannons will stop feeling like support guns and instead become sweeping beams of destruction. They no longer just chip away, they annihilate. From that moment and onwards, your DPS skyrockets. Then after this, you flesh out things with the Inspirado for more uptime and sustain, and the El Acran for additional crowd control and utility. Then later, you pick up Tenorario and Soldado, which are your late game power mode players. These nodes will stack crowd damage in such a way that even the higher level bosses will feel like they're made out of paper. Now, if you find yourself dying more than you like to, then here's also wiggle room to shift points into survivability nodes. You won't lose much efficiency doing this, but for most players, I recommend to stick with a full aggressive setup. Overall, the Rafa build thrives when he's leaning all the way into the offense, and if you commit, then the endgame payoff is absolutely worth it. Then gear-wise, Rafa is a dream build because of his flexibility. A lot of characters in the Borderlands 2 require hyper-specific weapon types or even elements to get real value out of their build, but Rafa's cannons will scale with all of your gun damage bonuses. That means as long as your weapon feels strong in your hands, it's going to be strong in your cannons too. That said, there are some clear standouts. Weapons with a high status effect chance are phenomenal, because your cannons will spread those same effects across the battlefield. A corrosive SMG, a shock shotgun, or even a radiation sniper can all feel OP, The underbarrel attachments are where things get spicy. Spread launchers, knife launchers, and tasers are all borderline broken with this setup. Not only do they chunk enemies fast, but if you cycle through the multiple weapons with different underbarrels, then you can essentially bypass your cooldowns and create a non-stop rotation of secondary firepower. Then when it comes to the rep kits, you got a ton of flexibility. EMP damage rep kits are great for bosses, and even let your cannons melt health bars even faster. Then lifesteal rep kits are perfect if you like staying in the thick of it without worrying about healing items. Then movement speed rep kits will make you incredibly slippery by letting you weave in through the chaos while your cannons keep firing. The beauty here is that none of these are mandatory. The Rafa is strong regardless, but with the right equipment combination, you just make it much smoother and more explosive. Now let's talk about upgrades and class mods. Enhancements are always going to be worth swapping based on your guns you're using. So if you're running the Jacob's crit focused weapons, then grab crit enhancements that bounce bullets or ricochet damage. Or perhaps if you're leaning into the Teddior with the throw builds, then boost those explosive values and watch your DPS skyrocket. Because Rafa turrets will scale with your weapon bonuses, you can customize your setup around whatever jobs you can find. This makes him one of the most flexible and smoothest characters to progress with. Then as for class mods, they're very hard to get, especially early on, but they are really the big thing that brings the build together in the mid game. Ideally, you want a mod that amplifies skills like the beam team, pain reaction, or the soldado. Even a small percentage boost here will translate into huge power spikes, and because Rafa is consistently fighting with both turrets and his own guns, so any mod that doubles down on uptime or the raw damage is worth grabbing. The point is that you don't need to stress about having the perfect setup. Rafa grows naturally stronger as your loot pool expands, and his kit is built to scale gracefully no matter what gear you stumble across. Then also, if you're looking for a reliable early game farming spot, then Sydney Pointy Legs in the Hungering Plain is the perfect for this build. The waves of the turrets will give you a ton of momentum, and the boss melts quickly thanks to your burst damage. The encounter drops solid loot, and once you've captured the drill site, you can reset it endlessly with the Moxies and Core Machine. Around level 15, you can start farming enhancements, and by 20, you can grab some class mods to round things out. Beyond that, the usual XP and the loot grinds will apply, so stick to the contracts, the side quests, and farmable bosses whenever you feel underleveled. Since the build scales so well with the gear, you always feel a power spike whenever you get a bigger shield or a gun. And now finally, let's see how to actually play this build. The rhythm is smooth and extremely forgiving. At the start of any fight, you want to drop cannons right off the gate, as they will cover the most ground. They immediately will begin chewing through the enemies, buying you the freedom to reposition, reload, or just open fire alongside them. From there, you essentially enter a flow state, so cannons lay down pressure and you just fire your gun into whatever's still standing. And together, this combo will melt everything in a sight. Thanks to skills like Joerga and Inspirado, you're rarely ever without turrets. Even in extended battles, your uptime is so high that you almost forget cooldowns exist. Your survivability comes naturally, so lifesteal rep kits will keep you topped off, while your turrets will constantly pull aggro away from you. Enemies will split their focus between you and the deployables, which makes the Rafa feel tankier than he actually is. And when the bosses show up, then you stack EMP rep kits, position your turrets for maximum uptime, and unload with your strongest gun. The combination of the DPS is ridiculous. It feels like you're running a co-op session, with friends that never miss. The pacing of this build is what really makes it shine. A lot of builds in Borderlands 4 are feast or famine, so you're either dominating or waiting around for cooldowns to reset. But Rafa avoids that entirely. His fights feel like a straight lineup upwards, so more damage, more pressure, and more explosions, until the battlefield is just empty. You don't ever slow down, you don't ever stall out, and you just keep on rolling from one group of enemies to the next one.